You have a choice in life, and there is a nuance in between these two choices. So we're talking about a spectrum, and that spectrum can be chaos or peace. Now, how do you decide, or what really takes you to this realm of spectrums, right? What is the things, or what are the things that are determining where you are placed, or where you live or exist in this spectrum? The spectrum really expresses how and who you identify with. You see, there are many layers of who you are, and those layers can constantly fluctuate, especially when you're not on a conscious journey, but on an unconscious journey, which we all are to varying degrees, are living our lives, right? In this spiritual journey that we're on. But when you're on the conscious journey, you're kind of aware of all of these different layers of self and how these layers of self interact with one another and how to bring balance to these layers. So these layers represent the ego, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and your higher mind, often called the superconscious mind. And when these layers are out of balance, and most times when they are out of balance, that is because the ego is really the one that is dominating all of who you are, all of the other spectrums. And when your ego is dominating all of who you are, then you usually fall into the realm of chaos. Because the ego's job is to create a separation, is to really make sure that you understand the division between self and others. Now, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that, except for that it is something that you will identify with the most because that part of yourself is the most dominant. You see, the ego does have a purpose. The ego does create your identity, does allow you to recognize yourself and recognize how you are authentic and different, and how you prefer particular things over others, and how you resonate with particular things versus other things. Now, the issue is the ego also creates a protective mechanism. The ego also expresses itself in fear, right? And even doubt, and comparing yourself to others. So when you're in this space where you're being led by the ego, it often creates chaos. It often creates destruction. And if you were to break it up into archetypes, if you are living in this ego mindset, it often makes you a villain of the movie of your life. You see, now recognize that the best stories about villains aren't that they're just bad people, but rather that they have a very twisted and skewed perspective as to what they think is right. So this isn't really about being wrong and right, okay? This is just really an understanding as to why you think a certain way and how that can materialize in your life. So when you are leaning and identifying with ego, you are creating chaos. You are identifying with chaos. You are allowing yourself to be thrown off the path of where you're supposed to be. And where you're supposed to be is actually to be aligned with consciousness, with your higher mind, okay? And when you are aligned with that higher mind, then you are on the spectrum of peace. You are creating peace. You are somebody who, yes, understands your own individuality, right, by way of the ego, but because the ego is now managed at a proper level, because your consciousness is leading everything that you are, then you understand that you can have an identity, recognize the need to protect yourself, acknowledge certain fears and doubts that may come up, acknowledge that, yeah, you may have some areas of comparing yourself to others, but when you recognize that the consciousness is your true identity, then you realize that really you are one with everything. You really understand the totality of who you are, and recognizing that everything that you are is in fact an expression or the thing that is creating all of your reality. And thus you are creating that reality from a place of confidence, a place of love, a place of recognizing the divinity, the God within you, as the medium by which everything else is experienced and expressed. You see? So when you recognize areas of your life where you feel like there is chaos, there is confusion, it is because those areas of your life are being led by your ego. And when you manage the ego and you don't identify with certain things, whether it be identifying with the past, identifying with a label, a job, who you think you are, and saying, this is who I am, so I cannot be anything other than that. And if you're noticing a transition in life is taking you somewhere else, you have to be willing to let that go and understand that that's really not who you are. That's probably just something you did, right? When you're recognizing that you are not someone who needs to be completed by another individual, in the sense of romantic relationships. That person does not complete you. So if you're going through a breakup, or if you're even going through an amazing relationship, but you feel a desperation or an attachment to another person, and that creates an uncomfortable sensation, right, of insecurities and doubt, it is because you're thinking you're not good enough to receive love, or you're too attached to what that person represents to you, and therefore you are clingy, you are jealous, right? So you have to recognize these are all expressions of the ego being the dominant factor of who you are. And that is causing those areas of your life to be experienced in a way that creates anxiety, creates pain, creates suffering. And once you recognize that, then you could say, okay, let me understand the ego's point of view. And then you want to come at it from a place of recognizing consciousness, which doesn't have doubts. It doesn't have fears, because it cannot be hurt. It cannot be destroyed, right? It is all encompassing of the infinite intelligence that we often call God. It is your individualized expression of God that is ultimately who you are. So when you recognize that all of the fears that the ego brings up, all of the insecurities, all of the quote unquote negative paradigms and thought patterns that the ego has, and you balance that out with consciousness and recognizing this is who you really are, then you let go of all of those things. Those things begin to dissolve and wither away. Then you come into really recognizing your true self. And when you come into recognizing your true self, that is where you manifest peace, tranquility, abundance, prosperity, everything that you can possibly desire and want to experience in this life. Because now you recognize, by being led by your consciousness, your higher mind, you are then in the realm of the creator. You are in the realm of actually creating the things that you truly want, the things that truly resonate with the core of your being, your true self, which is consciousness, higher mind, not the false self, which is the ego. Okay? So recognize and think about different areas of your life and ask yourself, where am I leading in this life? How am I feeling about these areas of life? Am I feeling distressed? Am I feeling, unsure? Am I feeling doubtful? Am I feeling anxiety? That means that you are being led by the ego. Then ask yourself, okay, why am I feeling these things? Okay. The most important question to ask, is this true about me? Is this true about me, my core, the core of who I am? That might be true about this false identity you may have, something maybe you were told as children, but it is not the core of who you are. Once you recognize your divinity, you understand the core of who you are is an expression and the ability to create anything you put your mind to. So understand the differences, recognize the chaos in life, and then transform and transition that chaos into peace by leaving and recognizing where the ego should be in your life and place it in its proper place and position, but then recognizing that you are truly consciousness And that consciousness is the thing that you should be led by, because that is who you truly are. Thank you so much. Feel free to go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter, and get a download of this free ebook, The Power Within. Also, when you subscribe, you'll be invited to my Manifestation Monday meetings, which happens every Monday, all right, which is going to help support you. This is going to be a live call, absolutely free, just by simply subscribing to my newsletter, where I will give you more support and talk about different ways that you can change your paradigm to support you toward creating the life that you desire and you truly deserve. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.